So, ladies and gentlemen, my name's Gene Arnold from Regular Guy Mountain Biking, and on this Bike Chat episode, we'll be talking about low-cost carbon fiber frames. I've got two of my friends on the line. I'm going to go from the middle on my screen to the right, because that's just how it looks. I've got James from JF Ride. So, James, if you want to maybe say hello there.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Gene. I appreciate it. This should be fun.
No, yeah, good call today. And I also have James from James the Bike Guy.
That's right, James number 2.
James number 2. So, besides these two guys being good friends of mine, all three of us were lucky enough to be sent carbon fiber frames from a company called Trifox.
Right.
So, we're going to talk about those frames, right? I won't get into that right this second, but I wanted to give you an idea of why the three of us are actually on this call together. We do have something very much in common besides the love of mountain biking and being friends. We have got basically the same frames-ish, like James from JF Rides. He got the hardtail version,
yep.
And we got the full suspension one. So we can talk about all that. But the fact is they're a low-cost carbon frame, and that topic's been pretty popular right now because it's hard to get bikes, right? So people are deciding, do they buy them, do they not, and low-cost carbon frames. So let's do this. We were all sent the frames, but we've never technically talked about them and how it worked out. So, folks, we're going to talk about low-cost carbon frames in general, but I'm dying to find out how the builds went. So again, I'm going to go from the middle over. No particular reason. Just I got to pick somebody over here. So JF, how'd your bike build turn out? What bike did you get? I don't know how else to do this. They're both named James. I was joking before we recorded. It's like, hello, my brother's Daryl, and then my other brother Daryl. What am I going to do here? So JF, how's your bike, buddy?
To be totally honest, so I don't know about you guys, but I was a little skeptical when I saw a $500 or in some cases a sub $500 carbon frame online. I think your guys was a little more expensive because you had the dual suspension one, but the hardtail version, I mean, is only, I think it's like $4.95 on sale. I think if you looked on places like Alibaba, you could even find it for less. And I mean, there's a certain level of sketch factor involved with that, right? When normal frames are coming in at, $1,000 plus, and $1,000 being kind of like that sweet spot, you're familiar with the company and you feel, comfortable, you've seen them around. And, when they offered to send this out, I was like, I was actually, frankly, kind of scared for myself. I didn't want the frame to crack or those type of things. But when I got it, I was really surprised. I mean, a lot of the finishings on it and things were just, super nice.
Right.
I think, otherwise of the fact that it doesn't, come as a complete bike and you kind of have to assemble it, adds a little more complexity into it. So maybe not for everybody, but to be totally honest, I mean, I'm not going to totally sell this or give it all away because I haven't put out my video yet. But, okay. All right. I like it.
JR, I'll save my opinion for after. I'd rather hear about what you guys have to say about the bikes.
Yeah, so I've had a few different brands actually reach out, and the only reason that I chose to do the Trifox was two things. They had this champagne color that was pretty dang cool, and then the second thing was I thought the geometry on the bike was a little bit interesting. A lot of the bikes that are on these Asian manufacturers or Asian direct manufacturers, a lot of them seem to be pretty much replicas of another bike out there. And in many ways, it took me a little while to notice that this looks very similar to, say, a Scott scale. But the geo is quite a bit different. And so I found that to be sort of an interesting idea. I like the idea of building a full suspension. And, the purchase process or the given process, however you want to consider it, was kind of interesting because it was a long wait to get the bike. They ended up changing the color on me when it arrived, and some of the hardware was missing and or had to be sourced or developed on our own for the suspension. So, my initial inclination was, it's kind of neat. It's neat that it's low cost. But at the same time, it's certainly something I wouldn't necessarily recommend to a beginner rider because it certainly took an extra level of expertise or care to be able to get the thing built up. But since having it, I don't know when we'll chat about the riding style of it, but there's certainly some things that I really like about it, and it's found a place in the stable of bikes. But it wouldn't be the first one that I pull off of the rack for a variety of reasons. So what to me will be really interesting with it is just kind of finding out a year or two from now whether or not it's still something that stays around, or if it's something that when I do eventually run into a problem, as you do with any bike, is it going to be repairable in the future is kind of a thought for me to consider too.
Yeah, I agree. And folks, just so you understand, we're not going to, well, first, if you see me turning, I'm not being polite. I've got all the controls and the chat over here, so I'm trying to chat and talk to people at the same time. We're not going to dance around some of the tough parts around the frame. This is
sure.
I don't want to do that because a lot of people are going to watch this and say, "Oh, they were giving the frames." They're only saying, I'm not going to do it.
No.
I do have a lot of positive things to say, but I have a lot of things that I have to very much agree with James that they just said. Look, I like the bike. We'll talk about the ride in just a minute. I think we should. I mean, it's a bike. We should talk about that, right? It's kind of important. But I was definitely concerned as well. Well, first of all, I'm not a very large YouTube channel. Okay, I've got some amazing subscribers. They're some of the most loyal, kindest people I could ever ask for. But I'm still not killing it yet. Okay, so there was also a feel good kind of factor. Someone sending me a frame. Look, at that point, I would have taken anything, not for nothing. I mean, I'm just a little YouTube channel, so to have someone send me a frame, there was kind of a nice pat in the back. But I'm also not going to lie to you because remember, folks. We just got the frames. So there was an investment. All three of us had to put into these frames. Remember, well, other than, do you mind, guys, if I do JF and JR? I don't. It's going to be a lot. Okay. So JF clearly got a hardtail. So there was no suspension other than the fork. But, JR and I, we had a shock we had to buy as well. And I wouldn't even be able to pull off that without his help. Again, we'll talk about that. I think it's very important we talk about that.
Right.
But there was an investment we had to put into these bikes. We just got the frames. And, I was a little worried, too, because, are they going to break? And that's money I had to put out to build this bike. Okay, so the frame broke, okay. Well, no, not okay. One, did I get hurt? But leave that out. What do I do with these pile of parts that I bought specifically? I mean, everything's orange. It's a pumpkin bike. What am I going to do? So, okay, so let's do this. We could go on and on with this. So let's, again, from the middle, JF over to JR over here.
Yep.
Tell me, you started building the bike, okay? And folks, again, we're going to focus on these frames because we've got them, okay? But this is, I would say this is pretty fair with most low carbon Chinese manufactured frames, right? I think. Do you guys feel is that like if we can kind of smooth this out across the board? If we bought another brand or got another one, I think it'd be pretty similar to this.
Sure.
Well, it could be, except for there was actually a brand behind this. A lot of the ones that you see on eBay,
that's
like
a good
it's
point.
even that much further away.
That's true. That's true.
So if that's low tier, maybe this is middle tier.
So JF, you got it. You put it together. Tell me the most positive thing you could, because we're going to get into the negatives, and then we'll talk about a negative, and then we'll end it on a high note over there. But let's what was the most positive thing, so we can start things out on a happy note about the bike and how that worked out when you had it all built up. And I don't want you to go into your video, but we got to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, totally. No, yeah. So, I mean, I think one of the best things, at least on this frame, for me, was that I was concerned about there actually being a lot of really rough, rough carbon in there. And a lot of these cheaper frames, I've had a few over the years. You really get a rough finish on the carbon. So that could be the exterior, or let's say where the headset goes in, or the bottom bracket goes in. You're going to find a lot of the remnants of the the carbon fiber and that type of thing. And honestly, when I got it, no problems. I literally was able to put together all the components. I didn't have to get in there and file anything down, which I've had a few. And some of them you literally have the carbon burrs still, like in the seats, in the seat tube and things like that. So I think, it probably wasn't the best carbon layup I've seen. We'll just call it that. But it wasn't as rough as some of the lesser or no name brand ones that I've had for sure.
Right.
I think that's fair. How about you, JR?
Yeah, so much to what JF was saying is, so, I did a video where I dropped an endoscope into the bike, kind of looked through what the tubes were, the ones I could get through the cable routing holes. And for the most part, I was actually impressed with how clean the bike was on the inside. Similar to what JF was saying, but also a lot of times you'll see bladder material left in there significantly. And there was only one tube with bladder material in it, and it was something with, a shift cable sending that down. I was able to clean out of the bike.
Gotcha.
I've certainly come across some other things through my life where you can't get a cable through a chain stay, for instance, because it's so blocked up with bladder material. So that was definitely a huge positive. And aside from the challenges finding hardware for the suspension, it actually assembled pretty well. There was a few concerns I had with it. I mean, you were talking, Gene, about, the investment. I have a fair bit of money into that bike. Quality aluminum full suspension is sitting behind me. And I actually made a lot of my choices on parts based on the frame that I was going to buy when I didn't like the bike. I was building the bike for the next one with what I was going to swap the parts to afterwards. Where we're talking positives, that hasn't happened. This one's still sitting behind me, and I haven't actually picked up that frame. So it ended up turning out better than my initial inclination, for sure.
That is funny. All right.
Yeah.
Buddy of mine just texted me over here. Jason, I don't know if you hear a little bit of hum or not. I don't have anything humming or anything like that. Can you guys hum? Anybody can hum? I can't. So I don't know. Jason, I don't know. Thanks for letting me know. I honestly, thank you for letting me know. I'm just glad you can actually hear us because maybe I didn't hit the wrong button. Might be JR. Okay, well, look, last time JR, his internet went down. So he got a. So if he's humming a little bit, I guess I'll live with the hum. But thank you. If anything else happens, please let me know because I want to make sure I fix it. I appreciate that. So I very much agree with everything you guys said. I opened it up. We were all nervous. My packaging could have been a little bit better. I was a little nervous when I opened it up. It could have been a little bit better. It could have been a lot better. But we're talking positives because after I unwrapped it, it looked good. I'll be honest with you. I was expecting, I'm just going to flat out say it, a crappy looking carbon fiber frame. I'm sorry, but it's not like they're getting the best rating. People are thinking low cost Chinese carbon fiber frame is going to be junky or whatnot. But I did not. The bike looked pretty damn good. It had no more blemishes on it than any other frame that I probably would have ordered. I mean, if you want to get picky, a little paint here, a little bit there, I'm like, look, it's a mountain bike, all right? I'm going to beat the hell out of this thing. So if there's a little something here, I didn't have a problem with it. And I also agree with you, JR, as far as the build went, and we will get into the areas of the suspension that you pretty much saved the day on. If it wasn't for that, it would have been a little bit tricky. But it was basically like building any other frame. But I still would agree with you guys that building this is still more of a higher level builder type of thing because we'll need to talk about support and service later on around that. Okay, so I already know what my hardest challenge was when we're going to build it. So we'll go down the line and talk about that. But so JF, you started building this thing, looked great out in the box. You're like, yeah, I'm stoked. I got this free frame, and I'm so cool, and I'm the best.
The Tiffany gloss paint.
Yay, I'm the best guy ever. You started building up, and you're like, this sucks. Like, what was the downside? Where did things start going a little bit south, and you got a little nervous about what did you get yourself into?
So right out of the box, I mean, yeah, you pull it out. Let's just be honest. I mean, they look pretty good. I mean, better from afar, but pretty darn good. And as far as like the finishing and the paints and that type of thing. But once you start really getting in there and looking at it, you're like, ugh. So when this bike came, I actually got it without any dropouts. So I didn't have a way to put a rear defender on it. And so I ended up having...
You really need those.
So I guess we're going to single speed this somehow, but But then, that's where the issues really started to kind of come into play, and I started getting worried. Like, okay, I'm spending money to buy things like a fork for this. I've already got handlebars and brakes and things lined up, and now I can't get a rear derailleur hanger. And it's not like they make these things, at the local shop, a rear derailleur hanger. And I actually work for a company that makes rear derailleur hangers, and we don't even make one that would fit this frame. It's so unique.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it's totally its own special thing, and there's such a limited run of these things. I don't think anybody else is going to make them, but it was crazy. So when you call them, or you try to call them, you have a hard time getting through. I've tried the actual chat function on the website. That was kind of So I emailed our personal contact, and I don't know that person is necessarily available to everybody.
Right.
But after she decided, okay, hey, you didn't get it, no problem. Let me send you a new one. Sent it out, but it took 30 days for me to end up getting it. And then the problem is that I only got half of it because I got the through axle. So this frame comes in quick release and through axle. And if you get the through axle, you need two sides of this. One for the dropout and then one for the opposite side with the locking nut and stuff. And I ended up only getting one side of the. So I was like, all right, I'm already 30 days in this build. I can't put this thing together really, and now I got to wait another 30 days. So 60 days in, I finally have all the parts, at least put together the frame. But that was my biggest challenge was just getting the parts I needed specifically for this frame, coming direct from Trifox. Just because it was so unique. And
I would agree.
They were helpful. I don't think it's their fault. I just think that's the shipping time frames from China to here, and especially utilizing a service that's affordable, for them to do it. I mean, it's expensive to send something there to here. So 30 days, if you make a mistake in that 30 days, you better be prepared to wait another 60 days to get back on your bike again. So that was my downfall with it.
That's harsh. That's harsh. Yeah. JR, go ahead. Talk to me. What? Maybe we're probably the same, maybe different. I know what I'm talking about,
Well, I know I was jealous of you because yours came with a through axle. I specifically asked for that in my email, and it didn't come with a through axle. But
and I asked, so that's something we need to talk about a little bit of an inconsistency of what shows up in the box because you got other parts that I didn't get. But go ahead.
Well, I think that's what kind of JF was leaning into there is likely. The QA when it's leaving the factory is not as solid as it could be. I don't know what their setup is depending on the size of their company. It could be in somebody's storage container that they're shipping them out, or it could be a big facility. I mean, you really don't know.
Right.
But so no through axle came with it. Luckily, that's easy enough to measure the threads and the pitch and just order up a through axle for it. But one of the real challenges came in is that the bike was, it's spec'd on their website to use a Trunnion rear shock, and that's a shock where the eyelets for the top canister, those are threaded into the canister instead of having an eyelet that you put a shaft through. And so in doing that, you need some special hardware, and you actually need some bushings inside of the frame that the bearing can rotate on, because as that suspension's compressing, there is actually movement there. And so they sent the hardware except for the bushing to allow the suspension to be able to move. And what that turned into was basically a bit of a challenge and a hunting mission to find something to replace it with. And luckily I was able to measure out and find out that some people make copper bushings that I could get in the proper size to take up the gap that was needed in the proper width to be able to get it all put together. But in doing so, that took some time. It's definitely probably not exactly right. I'm sure there was another bushing that it should have come with. And then once all that was put together, Gene, I'm speaking for you here, but I think you ran into it as well. The main suspension pivot for the chainstay that has a tendency to loosen itself. No amount of Loctite 248 or cleaning up the paint around that the spot for the bolt to go through is allowing that to keep walking out. So there's clearly some misalignment that's happening in the rear end that's allowing each time that suspension's compressing to help walk the bolt out.
Yeah.
So those were a couple of things that I certainly ran into.
And really, you're right. I mean, I don't have other like those are my big things. So why did I want to go from a more like an eye-to-eye type of thing to a Trunnion? This is a very it's a very short travel bike. I live in a very, very rocky, meaty area over here, so I wanted every little millimeter of travel that I could get. And since I technically had to buy a shock one way or the other, it's not like you save any money if you go from a Trunnion or a non-Trunnion style shock. It's the same money. So it's literally just which one do you want. There's no cost difference. And if you go with the Trunnion mount, you can gain a little extra suspension there. So I'm like, oh, I wanted it. And I didn't think it was going to be that big a deal, but I didn't have the right bolts. I had to do my 30-day thing. Luckily, Sussex Bike Shop, my buddy Jason over there, took out his box of bolts, and we just started shoving stuff in, and we found the right ones. And luckily, JR did all the hard work. That's actually how I found him, folks. We were doing some research, and he got his first, or we talked about it first, or I forgot. He was ahead of me in this process, and I had done some research and found him, and then we were just pinging back and forth. And luckily, he figured out the hard part, or it would have been harder for me to figure this whole thing out. So, kudos. I appreciate the help. So, we did figure it out, but the hardest thing I had was certainly getting the rear suspension, the right parts. And here's the other part, and that's why we're saying we're leaning towards more of a pro is too extreme, but higher level build, harder build. It's not like a press fit is any harder to put, the bottom press fit bottom brackets any harder to put into this. No, we should talk about the wheels manufactured one from JF. Those are freaking awesome. But what I'm trying to say is it's a bike. The parts fit technically the same. The hard part is getting the right parts. And if we didn't figure this out, luckily my connection over at SR Suntour, dude, that guy is an angel. He helped me get, I'm sending him numbers and specs. Like, where do you go? It's hard, and some people feel guilty talking to their bike shop because you're basically, what are you going to do? Go into your bike shop and say, hey, look, I'm ordering this stuff on Amazon. I got this low-cost Chinese frame brought in. Can you help me pick all the right parts out? It's like, yeah, sure, and don't let my shoes stick too far up. I mean, like, really, how do you do this? It's not an easy thing to do.
Or you end up like my Instagram inbox with constant questions on where those parts are from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, folks,
The number of people that send eBay links to is hilarious.
Yeah, let's not overutilize JR over here. He is extremely technical when it comes to bike parts, but yeah, definitely. He's charging now.
I mean, it sounds like, so some of the parts that you guys have specifically for like suspension were somewhat universal, like they probably fit other bikes. Whereas like, with the rear derailleur hanger, like that is very specific to this bike. So if somebody did run into a problem, they are going to wait that 30 days probably to get that part. Whereas it sounded like you guys, well, once you figured out what parts those were, you're able to kind of get those locally or Amazon or wherever.
You're right. You were screwed. Straight up. I was waiting for those Trunnion bolts to come in. I was getting a little impatient because I had everything else, and luckily Jason was able to help me out, and we got it working. But we'll talk about the bolt that fell out. Yeah, so it's tough. Everything kind of bleeds together about good and bad and ride. But that one part, let's just say that I lent the bike to a buddy. We're talking about ride in a little while. And one of the bolts in the suspension did come loose and come out. It's exactly one that JR said. And you're hosed. Like, you're back 30 days away. And here's the other hard part. It's not just 30 days. Our contact was very kind. You're right.
Oh, totally.
Talk to our the woman that we all have the same contact, folks. But to be fair, like most people aren't going to have that person, And even with that person, I'm taking pictures, putting arrows. Like, there's no exploded view and part number. I can't just say, no, I need the ABC 27A bolt because it shows it in the diagram. No, I'm just basically rolling the dice and hoping in 30 days I explained it well enough. So that was a little bit scary. So I have to throw that in.
Here's a question, too, for you, Gene and JR. So you guys both figured out, what bolts and suspension parts you needed, but did you guys tell them at Trifox, here's what we had to use? Because I don't see that any of that stuff updated on their website still. It's kind of like some of the stuff with this bike. It's like it's not all the information is there. Like, at least if they could tell you it's XYZ bolt and this needs to go here, people would probably have a little bit better experience and be able to, okay, I can buy this, my local shop. Whereas you guys had to do all the homework, and if they don't watch your video, they're probably not going to get that information off of the Trifox website.
I would say that these Trifox is more of a bike frame manufacturer and a little less of a store distributor because they don't have the proper mechanisms to do that. I mean, I'm working with another company right now, and I've got some of their bikes, and one of the things that they're specializing and focusing in on is we will have a store and a shop with every single component of every single part of that bike. Anything goes wrong, anything at all, every single piece is on this website. You can order every bolt if you want, but they're the full Monty, and Trifox is mainly just making the frames more of a distributor, not just like a builder, right? They don't really.
They just manufacture the frame.
Manufacturer. Thank you. I'm sorry. Yeah, definitely. So let's get into ride quality. So, folks, okay, blah 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 blah. We built these things. All right, wine. Everybody has an issue. Okay, but the bikes are done. We spent all this money, right? Okay, we figured out the bolts. You got your dropout. Stop complaining, JF. You got the damn thing. So, what did the bike become when you're done? And also, again, remember, ladies and gentlemen, it all comes down to good components as well. We all know what we wanted, and we put the right parts on for these bikes. Yeah. So I know I spent a couple bucks, even with whatever connections I had. There was a good chunk of money that came out of my pocket. So I wasn't going to build this thing to be a crappy bike. So I want to at least also give credit to the companies that supported me and the parts that I bought. They were specifically built to make this bike good. Now, if the frame sucked, and it would have been a bad bike. And we'll talk about that. But understand, I know I'm blabbing a little bit, but I want you to know that we made sure that the parts on these bikes are very, very good. So, JF, you got your bike, you put it on. Yep. You can get now, folks, if you want details about it, go to his website and watch the video when it comes out. But at least give a little teaser. How'd the thing turn out?
Yeah. So, like you said, Gene, I mean, with my bike, I mean, a lot of the parts and stuff were provided. I work in the industry, so I have a lot of connections, and they were kind of excited to see how is a $500 frame going to turn out, and so they were kind of curious too, and a lot of them helped out. So, I ended up putting like a Centaur fork on here, the Axiom. We've got the box components. Got the SRAM stuff. I've got some interesting stuff up here, like the Connect. Basically it's a soft ride saddle and seat stay. I was pretty impressed with the way it came out. Now, ride quality, it rides a little stiffer, I think, than most carbon frames that I've ridden, even, for being a hardtail. It's weird. It's not as kind of supple of a ride. So I think in some carbon frames, there's a little bit of give, they're kind of designed to flex a little bit. And I think with my particular frame, it's got a little bit of a harder ride, and that's actually why I went with this Connects seat post that basically kind of gives you about 30 millimeters of travel in the back there.
Gotcha.
Kind of softens it up. So that kind of helped it out. But overall, I mean, it's an XC frame. It's something that, it's kind of what got me into riding mountain bikes was XC. So it was kind of cool to kind of go back to an XC frame, riding enduro bikes for a long time and things like that. But it's got great geometry. It's 70-degree head tube angle, totally XC. 440 on the chainstays. 600 millimeters across the top on the top tube, and I kind of have the handlebar slammed down. So I mean, it's full XC mode. I took it out and kind of ripped it around Leadville, Colorado, and it handled really good. Like it is a rocket ship for sure. I think a lot of it, has to do with a lot of the parts that we put on it. I got the stands, no tubes, rims, the Crest S1s, the wide range cassette in the back really kind of helps us out. For a $500 frame, I'm just going to say, if you're the type of person that likes to tinker, man, this thing was a lot of fun to build. I mean, even though, a lot of these parts were kind of given to me, a lot of them are their entry level parts, and that's just, what I think, anybody could probably afford or want to use, without going into racing. But I think it came out good. I'm not going to give it all away and tell you that some of the other negative things that I kind of found with it, but I think ultimately for a $500 frame, outside of some of the inconveniences and some of the little blemishes and things, I think it's just a lot of fun, and I think it's affordable for most people. Right,
that's fair enough. And again, a $500 frame. So just to put it in comparison, folks, it would be very hard to get even an aluminum frame for $500 that would be designed like this light, so a $500 carbon fiber hardtail frame that's actually of any goodness isn't going to cost $500. So I do feel there's some value in there, and it's not even used, right? So I would agree. How about you, JR?
Well, to that topic, funny enough, so what do these go for? Like $1,200 or something on their website?
Something like that, yeah.
Suspension? Well, I just sold my my Fuel EX7 frame set. I sold that as I've upgraded to something else for the main bike for $1,400. So an aluminum used Trek frame is still going for more than what this does, brand new in carbon.
Wow!
And so there's definitely some intriguing stuff there. But so I built this up with a Deore 12-speed to be reasonably cost conscious. A Marzocchi Z2 up front, which went 120 millimeters of travel, because the spec sheet claims that it can do 100 to 120. And I really think this bike's actually a 100 millimeter bike that they just tell you can go 120. But so anyways, we did that, tossed on a set of i9 wheels, i9 stem, a few other fun things like the wheels manufacturing bottom bracket, that kind of stuff onto the bike. And, my first ride with the bike, I was not psyched. I've been chatting with another YouTuber, I think it's like MTB, a gentleman down in Georgia, who ran into some of the same shock issues. And, to speak for him, he texted me once and said that, it turns weird. I was like, you know what, you're kind of right. And then I took it to, there's this place near me called Hodges Village Dam, which is a place that they do Xterra racing and that sort of thing, more flowy, a little less chunky. And I went out on the bike, and it's like, darn, I really like this. It's a fun bike. And what I ended up doing after a few different rides was determining that there's this point where it starts to get upset. I started dialing into some of the geo, and I think it's interesting. It rides a little higher than it does on the spec sheet. And, I questioned, I went with a 44 millimeter offset fork, and I questioned whether or not with the head tube angle, I really should have gone 51. And maybe that's a little bit of some of the weird twitchiness that comes in. And so there's a few things like that I feel like it's maybe 85% baked. Part of the reason that I liked it was the geo was different than some of the other stuff that's out there. And you have to wonder, I think for the most part that was a good thing, but there's definitely some tweaking that happened. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning is Gina, I think you're about the same height I am. I'm 5'8", run a 30-inch inseam, and I chose their size large frame, which is obviously much larger than I would ride in any other brand. But that's because the stack number, the front end, was so much lower than just about every other bike in a medium, as well as the traditional, like medium frame, they were saying was a 15-inch frame size. And so there was some conflation on numbers there. This has a 35 millimeter stem. So there were a few compromises, and with the slack seat tube angle, I ended up having to run my saddle relatively forward to get the same knee over pedal spindle that I run on typical bikes. So I think there was a little bit of concessions made, but where I tend to like this bike is, when I get home from work, a lot of times I either have the choice for a 10 to 15 mile road ride or a 5 to 8 mile mountain bike ride. It's about as much time as I have before the sun comes down. And that place, Hodges, is literally about 5 minutes away from my house. So when I get home and I want to go exercise the dog, this is the bike I'll grab, because just to throw it in the car, go out for that ride that I can knock out and some tame stuff, I really enjoy it. But some of the more technical places that I ride, I've just stopped riding it, because I know that I'll get in there and get a little bit frustrated with how the bike handles. And one thing, if a 100 millimeter fork finds its way into my hands, I might swap that onto the bike this year, because I'm curious to see if some of those feelings go away when I travel adjust it back to what it maybe should be.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So
unfortunately, folks. Go, JR. Jeff. Go ahead.
I was gonna say. So you think you maybe overforked it a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. The BB height's a little bit higher. Putting an inclinometer on there, the head tube angle's a little slacker than it was expected. And so, I think I have a little bit of a trail issue in the front end. I think there's more trail than I want and a little more bottom bracket height. And those two would be most cheaply remedied by losing 20 millimeters of travel up front. Or maybe 110, because right now with the shock setup on this bike, it's 107 in back. So it'd be interesting to set up, and I don't know, just another thing to tweak around with and play with.
Yeah.
Note to both of you, if you ever do one of these live streams and you tie it to Facebook, click the Go Live button.
Oh, that's probably
so we're now live on Facebook. Yay.
Yes.
Sorry, guys, you missed about 35, 40 minutes of everything, so it's like, good night. In my defense, YouTube just starts. It says it's waiting for the stream, and when I click record here, that puppy just kicks right in and just goes. With Facebook, it says the stream is there, but then you have to click on Go Live, and now we're live, so whatever, live and learn. So Bike Chat number 3 will have Facebook working really well. Okay, so I will tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, I am not as technical as these two guys. I'm not going to give you numbers. I'm just going to give you a feel. And honestly, that's why you try to always hang around with people that are, know things more than you, because you can learn, and that's why it's great to hang around with these guys. So they're getting dumber, and I'm getting smarter, I guess. So I apologize. Anyway, I first tried the bike out, and I'm like, well, I'm glad these parts fit on another frame, because this sucks. But I think for a lot of new bikes, it's because this was a drastically different. I was riding my Santa Cruz Nomad. I mean, I'm riding enduros. I'm riding a not really an XC bike. Then I get on this thing, and I'm like, oh man, And then I'm kind of like, you know what, Gene? You spent a lot of money on this thing. You really gotta let's try it a little bit more. And I tried a little more, because understand, way under the north, we are living in a very rocky area. They're not. Doesn't mean that people aren't killing it on hardtail single speeds. There's some very talented, strong riders. But the majority of us are looking for at least 140 in the back, like something in there, Yeah. So it was a harsh ride. But after some doing so and riding it and saying, Gene, just try it. I'm not going to lie to you. Even all my buddies say, Gene, you're faster on this bike. The only reason why I would take this bike apart is, one, I spec these parts, SR Suntour across the board, box, Archer components for the shifter. I've got some nice stuff on this bike. I did also invest in the parts, because at some point I will get another frame, and I'm going to want to do, I'm not in bed with these guys forever. Someone's going to send me a frame, and I'm going to want to do a review on it, and these parts are going to go on it. The investment was in good parts that can be reused. Yeah. But this bike won't come apart until I have a real reason to, because I actually like it. I actually lent it to my buddy. We call him the Postman. because he sends it. You know, you got it. But anyway, he's a great guy. I know.
On the trail.
I could. Well, that's his nickname anyway. We love him dearly. But I lent it to him for one of his first races. Did really good. In fact, honestly, there was one glitch that he had to deal with, and a misshift and whatnot. More on my end. I thought I tuned it up. I could have done a little bit better. Anyway, he still came in like second or third on his very first race. So I got to tell you that number one, if we can just leave out all the tough to get the parts and all that stuff, I really like this bike now. Now, we can certainly talk about they copied a Scott Spark, or I had a very good time on a Giant Trance. I would tell you right now, if I had the opportunity to buy, beautiful bike. I loved riding that bike. If you lay these next to each other, there's a lot of similarities. I'm not here to talk about copying or not my goal here is this low-cost Chinese carbon fiber frame. Is it good or is it bad? People, you don't have to buy it. You can hate it, whatever you want. But my goal here is to talk to you about this frame behind me. Is it any good? Man, I got to tell you right now, I was tired this morning. I went for a ride with my buddy Frank, and Frank's like, which bike you riding? And I took out the Pumpkin because I was tired. And this thing just hauls ass. It is such a fast bike. And when I'm not feeling up to it, like unless I'm feeling really, really bad and I take the e-bike out, this is the one I take unless, like you said, JR, I know I'm going someplace where it's going to get gnarly. This is not the gnarly bike. It would actually hurt more. It's not designed for the real rough stuff. But I got to tell you, I really enjoy riding this bike. I spec'd out some good parts, and everything seems to be complementing it well. I did go the opposite for an XC, and I have a bit of a rise in the front. I like the Pacific Northwest bars, so I went up a little bit, but that's partially because my back is not great. I didn't want to be splat out like that, so that also helps a little bit for just moving around. But, man, I got to tell you, I love it. I mean, the bike is definitely found a place in my rack. Now, I was even thinking, I'm not going to do this, but the biggest issue that we're all agreeing with is getting the parts, sourcing the parts, support. So what that basically means is if these low-cost carbon fiber frames had local distributors, so I was thinking maybe I should start selling these frames. I mean, like I said, if I could, it just would be more trouble than that. So I can't get into that. But that's really our big, like if we added up all of our complaints, the biggest complaint is I couldn't get the damn bolt, right? You couldn't get the dropout. It wasn't the end result. It was getting to it because the parts were hard to source. The people were nice to talk to, but you can't get the support and you can't get the parts. What do you think, JR?
Well, to be fair, I mean that's part of what you're paying for with a better bike. It's it wouldn't be possible to do that at the same price. You know, there's things like the liability insurance that's not going to be on this bike. I mean, if something were to happen,
good luck.
There's no Trifox to go find. You know, the parts. You know, I'm curious about how a warranty would happen in the future. You know, there's a lot of things that you essentially pay for with a more expensive bike. Where you're right, the end result right now, it performs pretty well and it's a nice bike. But there's certainly some question marks that come into the markup or whatever you might want to call it that gets added to a bike. And paying for that stateside person or somebody to inventory the parts and do forecasting to know what small parts they need, and that all costs money. And so, you know, as we're talking, I'm wondering, you know, it's like I should probably buy a derailleur hanger. I don't have a second.
I asked them for an extra one ahead of time. I talked to my guy. I'm like, look, you're going to
there's a pile of that stuff, and that's where, you know, you were saying a higher level rider or whatever, right? I feel like this would be a fun toy for an enthusiast, but it would be a mistake for a beginner rider or somebody who's not interested in doing their own work. Because to save money, you trade off. You know, it's you don't get everything all at once, and that's true with a lot of stuff we deal with in life. A used car is a great deal, but when it breaks down, it's on you. A new car, the dealer takes care of it. Like there's this pile of that stuff that I see in it, but it's a fun toy if somebody's ready to build up a bike or have the experience and maybe doesn't want to pay for the name brand, but is willing to take on the risks that come with it. It can certainly be a ton of fun.
Mm-hmm. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I wanted to do a quick, and we're kind of touching on it right now, but we agree that the frames and I would go as far as, well, let's speak for Trifox. I can't go as far as everybody. What I'm going to say is it's a low-cost carbon fiber frame is something to possibly think about if you're into that. But what I want to talk about right now to close things up is for each of us to try to say, who do you think should buy this frame? So look, you're going to be looking, you're going to get these like on Instagram, you're going to get these ads for these low-cost carbon frames. Who should think about giving this a try? So go ahead, and wrapping things up, JF, we like them, but who's this really for?
I think, they're cheap and they're fun to put together if that's your bag of fun is putting bikes together and getting them at a cheap price. I think, somebody who's going to depend on this bike every day, like let's say as a commuter or, put a lot of mileage on it or bikes at a high level, this is not for you because, I haven't had it that long and you guys have had yours a little bit longer than me and maybe we come back to this in a year and if we still have them, we do the long-term review. But my concern is, there is, JR brought it up, there is no warranty on this. There is no used car, company calling saying, hey, you want the extended warranty on your Trifox frame? No, there probably isn't a warranty. So if you're going to depend on this, if this is your mode of transportation or you really, need this bike, this is probably not the bike for you.
I agree. How about you, JR? I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, one quick point when you were saying you can't speak to all the bike brands. One thing that I guess I would say that gives me more confidence in this bike than, say, a lot of the low-cost carbon frames out there is there's a huge amount of marketing costs that went into Trifox sending these. I've seen the frame show up a couple of UK YouTubers. I've seen them in Brazil on YouTube. And the actual, the cost, both the manufacturing cost of that, but the shipping is probably as much or more than the manufacturing cost of that frame. And so they're putting out a lot of cash outlay. So to me, the thing to keep in mind is the company is probably caring about their reputation, which likely means that maybe it's better than the ones that don't care about their reputation.
That's a very good point. Never actually thought of it that way. You're right.
Assumption. I don't know if it's true. But that gives more confidence than some of those ones that I see on AliExpress for $2.99 without a brand name on the side.
Yeah, exactly.
That scares me way more than a company who's investing and trying to get themselves out there. So to that, for somebody who's looking to play with a bike, have an experience that they can't have with, say, a main brand or maybe, a lot of us like to tinker. You play with remote control cars. This is just a bigger thing to build and have a good time with. That's probably the right person to it. And I would encourage somebody to try to find, if not this brand, a brand that has some reputation behind it, because likely it's earned. Maybe not, who knows. But you are taking a risk when you're buying a low-cost frame from overseas. So you want to hedge that the best you can. So if you're an enthusiast, you want to play around, you're willing to put up with some of the hassles to have a brand that's different than the next person or maybe to supplement your main bike, it makes sense to have fun. If you're trying to be budget conscious or, get the most bang for your buck, it might be buying an aluminum bike from a brand that you're not going to have to deal with that stuff. So the low cost doesn't mean cheap, affordable, I guess is the right word to say. Because there is still cost involved in doing it.
So, obviously, I do very much agree with what you guys are saying. They're all valid points. Actually, I like what you said, JR, about the marketing. I didn't even think about that. If you think about some of the frames on Alibaba and all the other ones, they're just there. You don't ever really see ads or anything, but we do have to. So, folks, we've been giving you the downside of Trifox in the support and getting some of the parts, and that's given because of how this is all working out. But as far as low-cost carbon fiber frames go, I have to agree with what's being said here. They're trying. I mean, I literally got an email from my contact last night saying, "Can you make another video?" They're in touch with us, right? I mean, these people are communicating with us. It wasn't just sending these things out. How did it go? So if you were going to give a low-cost carbon fiber frame a try, I can't compare it to anybody else, but I'm going to tell you that I'm pleased with the way this had worked out compared to, like, basically just throwing your money out to Alibaba and the frame shows up and it's cracked and you're like, well, what the hell do I do now? So I will give props to Trifox for trying to step it up for a low-cost carbon fiber frame distributor like this. I would say that this is not an entry-level build thing. I think we all agree on that. I would say that this is a good frame for someone that maybe has an existing hardtail or an existing full suspension aluminum bike, and they're like, you know what? I've got some decent parts. It won't be that big an investment to make the change. What do you say? I mean, a lot of us that are going to be doing this, look, I'm not surprised if a lot of us have more than one bikes behind us. So, you know, so I would agree it shouldn't be your daily driver. But if you've got a bike that you want to convert, hell, man, yeah, give it a try. Or like what we all did when we bought our parts, we did all buy or, you know, acquired some decent parts. Okay, not all super high end, but decent parts that could be reused. So understand that you're going to give it a shot. Odds are it'll be pretty decent. I haven't really heard too many things on YouTube. I've looked around a lot. They've sent out quite a few frames.
They have.
I haven't really seen many disasters, if really anything, other than like someone's like, "Hey, dude, have you dropped it off?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. This is not a bike you drop like do a drop off of. No, I never will do a drop on this, but I wouldn't do a drop on a frame like this it's not the right bike." So in summary, I mean, those are the people that I think should be looking at a frame like this, because I do think it's worth a shot, but I think you need to take in everything that we said and understand that I don't think it's a roll of the dice. I just think that there are some things that may be a little bit more of a challenge that you're going to deal with than getting a frame, carbon or not, from somebody else. Cool.
Absolutely.
So, but in general, I think we can all wrap up and kind of say, right, I mean, thumbs up. It still was a pleasant experience. We're still riding them. Like, nobody's said we took the parts apart already, and Gene, it was just so bad I don't even have it together anymore. No, I mean, we do like the bike. So, thumbs up to Trifox. And I think if you're into giving a low-cost carbon fiber frame a try, check them out, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good. Jack Adler just logged in. So thanks so much, Jack, for joining in as we close up the live stream. And always prompt. Love my buddy Jack. So hi, Jack. Bye, Jack. Anyway, folks, that's going to do it for this bike chat. I really want to thank my buddies over here. We have James from JF Rides. He's the guy with the sunglasses right there. So check out his YouTube channel. When this eventually gets redone, I'll have this all put in YouTube with links to their channel so you can get to see everything, and that'll be cool. And then I've got my other buddy over here, James from James the Bike Guy. So I thank you for joining. Again, links for everything. And that's going to do it, folks. I hope you found this video or podcast, if you're listening to it, enjoyable. Hopefully this will help you figure out if you should get a low-cost carbon frame. And that's going to do it for this one. Take it easy, everybody. Good night, my friends.
See ya.
See ya.